Hey, folks, and welcome, because this is totally the first time that you've seen us tonight on the stream, and we didn't go live with actual cameras and audio earlier or anything like that at all. Uh, totally pro streaming after 5 years, still top of my game. Anyway, I would like to welcome you to our finale of The Hollowed, one of our short adventures that takes place in the eras of Falknor, which is the little homebrew world that I am slowly creating. On my free time, all that copious free time I have. We do run our channel 100% for charity, and it does all go to benefit Satchel's Last Resort, which is, if you follow me on any of my social media, you've seen plenty of pictures of Lunar. That's where she was rescued from. Also, to help support our other creators out there. As of this evening, I am encouraging everyone with the new month to actually unsubscribe from my channel. If you would like to donate to whatever charity you're donating to, I'll have a direct link down there for you to do so. But as we do run 100% for charity, and I'd like to make a statement that Twitch really is not treating their marginalized creators very well, and so we're going to stop giving them a piece of that money and make sure it all goes 100% to charity. So I thank everyone through the years who have subscribed to this channel, who have been a part of this channel, who like to use the little emotes and all that type of stuff. But emotes are certainly not worth the inaction that we are seeing by Twitch. So I encourage you to unsubscribe here and to support me, in that case, Satchel's Last Resort, by an alternate means, and for other creators as well, to make sure they get more of your hard-earned dollars go directly to them. On that note, I would also like to say that we have raised almost $700 for Satchel's Last Resort over the run of this show, including subscriptions that remained active through the summer months. So we will be donating that. You'll see a tweet going out probably tomorrow showing our donation in the name of all of you viewers and our cast. So thank you so much for the support of Satchel's Last Resort. They truly are a wonderful organization, and every little nickel and dime helps down there. This will make sure that some of the dogs that are permanent residents down there get the medical treatment that they need to have a long and happy life. As I said, I'm Tall Squall, he, him. I'm your DM for the night. And let's go around and meet the cast real quick. First, we'll start off with Sharang.
I am Sharang Biswas. I use he pronouns for myself. I'm a game designer, writer, and interactive artist, and I am playing Jad, who is a very sexy bard of the College of Spirit, and he's also a Dhampir, and he may not have nails this good, but he's still very sexy.
Next up, we have Anita.
Hello, everybody. I'm Anita, or Fanita, or Critical Misses, and I can be found anywhere online under those two places. I use she, they pronouns. Tonight, I will be playing for the last time, but maybe not. Maybe there will be another one shot in our future sometime. I'll be playing Elspeth Carter, my Divine Soul Sorceress.
Next up, we have Don.
Hey everybody, I'm Don. I'm playing Rakeesh. My pronouns are he, him. Rakesh's pronouns are he, him, and Rakeesh is a hobgoblin bard rogue. And this has been a great journey. I'm really looking forward to seeing how our darkly hopeful tale ends.
Next up, we have Carl.
Yep, I'm Carl, he, him pronouns, and I am playing Barzul, the reborn gargoyle barbarian, who is coping with the consequences of his past actions.
And last but not least, we have Bird.
Hey, I'm Bird. I'm he, him. I'm playing Tamarind, who is a wasteland gnome, who is basically a warlock, his patron being that of the Hallowed, but for specific purposes, it's the undead is the class feature. Yeah, and he's just here to have a good time with his best buds.
So we're going to jump right into it with our party. Where we left off last time, we have our party having just been chased down by some pursuers from Falcon Spire. entered into an aerial combat, a rather tense aerial combat. Luckily, through some fast use of spells, some incredible shenanigans by our gargoyle, and a really, really just brutal use of the sleep spell when our my poor mage lost concentration on his flight spell and then got put to sleep, so plummeted to his death. They actually basically came out pretty much unharmed, but they now stand upon these cliffs above the stronghold where they had spent the night last night and discovered many of the dark secrets that were sort of lurking beneath the wasteland, and maybe the motives of Falcon Spire. They're almost 1,000 feet now above that, high on the cliff face, on a path leading up to the plateau and their final destination of Ravenrook and the Stone Druids' vineyard. It is also nearby to Falcon Spire, where they have just murderated a nobleman and one of the royal family, who lie sort of smashed on the rocks down below.
And their pet gargoyle.
So, with that, I think we're going to hop right into this. All of you sort of, that rush of adrenaline still sort of pumping through your veins. The party sort of reassembling up above. Barzul, if you could roll me a investigation check as you looted the bodies down there below you at the end of our last session.
All right. Investigation. It's a flat roll. That is a 18.
On an 18, certainly the easiest thing to spot is those boots of flying that the nobleman was wearing, the lieutenant commander, member of the Greymont family. You also see his breastplate. It does not appear to be magical, and whether or not it would fit anyone in of your party, you're unsure. Some finery, certainly a fine cloak, etc. On the mage, the wizard, Sam Barthene, you find not the exact same, but certainly of the same family, of a jeweled dagger. It's actually more of a short sword than a dagger, I should say, and another signet ring, not nearly as formal or as intricate as the one that Elspeth discovered.
Did I also find the axe that the?
Yes, you do find this axe of returning, which he was using. It would require attunement to be able to wield.
Yeah, I think I will take the two rings, the short sword, clearly the boots, because someone's gonna have fun with those, and the axe.
Okay. You're sort of arriving back up at the party. The body's still left down below.
Are we afraid? Is Elspeth with us, or is she still running away?
Elspeth,
Elspeth, once the fear effect dropped from Tamron, Elspeth came back to make sure everyone was okay. And if they
Oh, right. The
needed
last
healing.
thing I did was I licked Tamron. I remember.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I turn, we had this moment, Tamron and me. So I turned to Elspeth, and I'm like, "Are we worried about more of them coming back? Because I can speak to the corpse to try and find out if you need me to."
I don't know. What I heard was that the lieutenant would be coming after me to take me up to Falcon Spire. But as for anyone else that might be coming, I don't know. I mean,
Would you like me to ask?
I mean, if you can, that
So
wouldn't be the worst thing.
Is Barzul still down there?
he's
Yeah,
just
just
sort of
returned.
coming back up. You could yell down to him.
So
if you-
I yell down and amplify my voice with my illusion if necessary, being like, "Hey, handsome, can you fetch the lieutenant's body up here?"
sort of like,
I say that specifically because last time I said handsome to you, you got so perturbed. I'm like, hey, I must keep doing
yeah,
this.
well, sort of like you see sort of Barzul sort of like doing that sort of like hopping climb back up.
Yeah.
And he sort of looks down and looks up and just sort of like falls off the wall and like and will eventually return with the lieutenant's body.
Okay. So yeah, you arrive up there with the loot and the pretty just brutalized. I mean, he got smushed by you. Luckily, the head does still seem to be intact. The rest is not real. It's kind of a gel.
Leaking out of the breastplate.
Yeah, and the breastplate not being magical is just he's kind of pancaked inside of the breastplate.
I imagine actually this might sound a little brutal, but I imagine Barzul has had experience with the Speak with Dead spell in the past.
Oh yeah.
Target, and I think he will just actually, instead of bringing the whole body, just bring the head.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah, perfect. So I grab the head and I turn to Elspeth and I say, we will have 5 questions to ask it. And then I'm like, great, would you stick out your tongue for me?
Me?
I'm speaking to you, aren't I?
Oh, okay.
And I like, with my nail, I like nick her tongue so I can collect a droplet of blood from her tongue. And I like, and I'm ignoring that, and I smear it onto the eyelids of the corpse, and then there's some of the neck still left, and then I like bite to the neck, draw out blood, and then open my mouth and let it drip onto the body, onto the head to cast the spell. And I snap in front of it, and I open the 2 eyes that I closed.
Elspeth's gonna prestidigitate her tongue.
Yep, and I'm casting Speak with Dead. It'll last about 10 minutes.
Yep.
And until the spell ends, we can ask up to 5 questions. Obviously, it won't know weird stuff, and it's stupid. It won't, like, it's a stupid corpse. So.
Yep. Yeah, you see these eyes come open.
And I turn. I'm holding this like head, so I turn it so that it's looking at me and Elspeth, and I'm like, "Who else is coming after her?"
It looks. Its eyes just sort of roll in the sockets over to Elspeth, and then roll back to you. Everyone.
Oh,
Once
lovely.
they know she exists.
Okay. Second question. Who else knows she exists?
Just me and Sambarthne.
Okay, well, they're dead. I think all 3 of them. Why do they want her?
She is a divine wellspring.
Well, that was easy enough. I turned to Elspeth. I like brandish the head and put it straight up to your face, Elspeth. And I'm like, do you have any more questions? We have 2 left. Also, the blood from the neck is leaking onto my arms, by the way, just like.
As it does.
But I find safety in Ravensbrook.
The stone druids are a force unto themselves. Their domain is their own and absolute.
And I turn to the others. I'm like, we have one more question that this good lieutenant could answer. Would anyone like to know something he might have known in life? And I'm like waving the head around at everyone.
So Rakesh has used the last couple of minutes of his fly spell to fly up to a little perch that's overlooking this sort of cliff face where they're doing this ritual. And he's watching on with a mix of horror and inner conflict as this ritual happens, as he watches Dalvin
do this horrific
right?
necromancy.
And he's
Nightmare.
he has that journal. He has the mage's journal in his hands, and he's kind of flipping through it like he's looking for answers, but really he's not really reading it. He's really watching. And at some point he shuts it, and his fly spell ended. He kind of slides down the cliff face to the rest of the group, and he calls out as he strides over and says, I do have one question.
Now, when I see you looking uncomfortable, the others, when they look uncomfortable, I'm like, whatever. But when you look uncomfortable, I actually like, oh, and for an instant, I'm like, I'm holding a severed head. What? But then that's taken over by, oh, it's just a head, like whatever. But I bring it less up to your face than I did with Elspeth.
Rakesh kind of flashes you a swashbuckling but a little thin smile, and says directly to the head, staring at the eyes, who is responsible for hunting the Conclave?
I do not know.
And with that, the blood that was on its eyelids steams and evaporates off, and the skin on the body, because the spell will never work again on this body, the skin on the body turns ashen gray, and the head actually starts to smoke a bit, and I have to get rid of it. I roll it away, but then I absentmindedly start licking my arms clean while waiting for the others to do their stuff. Remember, I have an extra long tongue, right? So I'm like, and I'm like, well, at least we know that no one else is hunting you specifically, Elspeth.
Well, on one hand, no one is hunting me, but if anyone else finds out I exist, everyone will be hunting me.
Yes, well, we'll just have to keep your secret. Just keep your shiny, bright white lights to yourself.
Yeah, I guess.
And I give you a bloody grin.
Rakesh looks a little physically stricken, almost by he was not expecting the mage not to know that answer.
This wasn't the mage. This was the lieutenant.
This was the lieutenant.
Oh,
The
lieutenant.
lieutenant.
That's still okay. He assumes that they were all in it together, because that's the simplest solution in his mind. And when he finds out that that's not the case, he's stricken by that, and he turns and takes a couple of steps away. Also, he doesn't have to look at Dalvin
and his old friend licking blood off his arms.
And he just idly, a little almost a little childishly, boots the head over the cliff into the mist.
Yeah, it falls below. I mean, with the rock fall and Barzul's sort of parkouring up the side, the bodies are somewhat obscured down below. And even either the gargoyle itself, its own stone body having basically just sort of shattered. If someone was looking, a tracker would be able to find them, but they are somewhat concealed if someone knew where to look.
Animals should make short work of them anyway.
This is true.
Yeah, it's in the middle of the woods, right? Yeah.
Lots of carrion animals around the wastelands.
Including those illusory ones that I made last time.
Yeah. I was going to say, those corpse fae, they show up like, maggots, pretty much. So, it's probably around 11 in the morning. Now that all this is sort of settled out, what would you all like to do?
Before we depart, I think Barzul is going to sort of very sort of like matter-of-factly sort of walk up to Elspeth and hold the boots and just sort of offer them. These will be useful for you.
What do they look like, actually, the boots of flying?
Kind of cowboy boots with wings on the side. Think Hermes boots.
Nice.
I'm gonna empty them of goo. Prestidigitate as much of it as I can off.
A foot pops out. Yeah.
The foot goes back over
I
the
would
edge
definitely
too.
have emptied them of feet before
Yeah.
climbing up. And then sort of similarly, sort of just like not even sort of pay exactly attention to Elspeth's reaction, sort of turn and stride over
Thank you.
and immediately just pause as he hears that. And we'll sort of turn and just give like a grunt of acknowledgement and a nod. And then take a few more strides over to Rakeesh.
I'm assuming
Drop
they need
the rings.
attunement.
They do need attunement.
And we'll drop the rings and the short sword in Rakeesh's hands.
Is anyone hurt? Like, physically?
I don't think I touched you all.
I don't think so. I think
Tamron's missing
Tamron
2
took some
HP.
damage. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tamron took a little bit of damage.
I'm like, this handsome stony man protected me from all harm. And I like pat your like
I pushed
lower
out
upper
the cliff.
thigh. And I like pat his thigh like approvingly, like
I just pat like one heavy pat to boink on John's head.
I like wince slightly.
Rakeesh missed all of the drama. He missed a lot of like the reveals of, so he doesn't actually really know who Barzul is, just that Barzul is more than a gargoyle. And so he takes these rings and he takes this short sword and he looks up at Barzul and kind of runs his fingers around the edges of the rings and says, "Who were you before this, all of this? Who were you?"
Just like gives a little bit of a grumbling bolt from the chest. Someone better forgotten.
There is this thing about stories. They never end. There is no ending to your story. Not now, when you are as you are now, and not when you are dust. Who you were is part of who you are now. You should not forget this. Not so easily, my friend. You are brave, and I am glad you are on our side.
Gives a little bit of a toothy, stony smile to Rakeesh. I'll think about it. We should go. Soonish.
I agree. He looks down at the rings and the short sword. I mean, like, do they look special? Do they look...
Not particularly. These the short sword does not look particularly magical in any way, where there's none of the runes or anything that would give you an idea that it might be magical. It's well made. It's very well made. It is somewhat. It's a nobleman's short sword, and the rings again just seem to be rings of station. Both these rings came off the mage. There was no identifying ring on the lieutenant.
Off the mage. Okay.
So that's the mage was the brother, right? Not the
The
lieutenant.
mage was the brother of
Yeah.
of Sam Barthenay.
Yeah, the lieutenant was the royal family,
Correct.
right? Okay.
So he will start to pack up the items. He doesn't put the rings on because he doesn't know what that might entail, if they are magic, if there's some sort of magical defense or curse. But these could be valuable, and they have very few resources. So he'll just start to pack them away and tell Barzul, "I'm ready to get going as soon as you are."
Sort of looks
The
toward
glider
others.
is sorry.
Destroyed.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, it's super.
I don't even
super
think it
gone.
made it. I don't even think it made it to
Yeah.
the landing.
Sure did not.
Yeah. Absolutely not.
So we're gonna walk the rest of the way, I guess.
Yep.
Right?
We
So
have made good time. Did better than I thought.
yeah, you cut a good 5 days off of your trip, so you did very well. So with a sort of look over your shoulder and eyes to the sky now, you are able to see pretty much your destination ahead of you, traveling for the next day, for the next 24 hours, we'll say. You find a spot to rest as you're getting closer to Falcon Spire, and where this sort of necks down. Lots of sort of little easy campsites that you're able to find for a secure night's sleep. And you reach the top of the plateau.
Jay, should we take a long rest?
Yep,
or
you can
not?
take a long rest.
So
Yep, you can take a long rest. So
I was gonna talk about my class feature for long rests. Do I have time to tell a story, or would you prefer to speed through this?
you can tell a story, and so we can get this.
Okay, so everyone take a long rest, and with that, everyone gets 9 temporary hit points, because as we're relaxing or whatever, unbidden again, this story starts coming out, and this one's a strange story because it doesn't have like horrific elements like all the ones I say. To start with, it's a story. And I kind of go unfocused. Like Jad kind of goes staring in the distance, not focusing anything. And he starts telling the story, and his voice loses the like, "Hey, handsome" swagger that he often has. And he starts telling the story about from a long, long time ago. Like the things he's describing in the story seem very like antediluvian, like archaic, right? And it's a story of this like merchant family and how the son went off to study in university, and the family kind of started like losing money because of whatever business things, and then this local lord did something and like impoverished the whole family and used the money to erect a statue of himself outside that family's like house. And so the son came back, and there's a lot of the story, but ultimately the story becomes creepier because in the end the son uses whatever he learned in the university, it's not really clear, kills the lord, and then looks at the statue and says, "You thought you would live forever? No, I am going to live forever." And so maybe he did magic. The story is unclear. The statue ultimately like it doesn't crumble. It like withers away as though like through age and rot, even though it's made of stone. And Jad's eyes focus again. And normally he remembers the stories he's told, even if he doesn't remember how he knows the stories. But you realize he kind of thinks he just was daydreaming. Like he does not remember telling you this story at all, especially the part that like was like the last bit he says, "You will not live forever, I will live forever," was in this like very harsh, cold voice that some of you have heard him use before. So
Nice.
but you'll get 9 temporary hit points for that.
So you continue on your way after your long rest, and as you reach the top of the plateau, you can see sort of over to the east, sort of the walls of Falcon Spire, sort of off in the distance, just this huge sort of walled city with turrets and steep roofs. But Ravenrook lies to your east. You mainly see a dark forest that way, but the road, while the main portion of it turns towards Falconspire, you do see a smaller sort of single track path that leads off sort of towards this huge woods that the older folks among our group would know of as the Midnight Weald, this sort of huge impenetrable forest that runs through the center of the continent. And you can start heading down that pathway. Near sunset, you begin to start to see this tangle of vines. It is, you've heard to this referred to as a vineyard, but it is not a cultivated vineyard in any way that you are familiar with the term. It's not straight rows of grapevines neatly arranged in rows. It is almost a maze. The vines are laid out almost in a faceted pattern, as though following the lines of the cracks of a mirror. And it is massive there in front of you. You can see it stretch. At first you see just a little bit of the coloration change between sort of the just dark silhouette of the Midnight Weald, and then it just starts expanding across the lower part of your horizon, larger, larger, and larger, until it basically is taking up your entire vision in front of you. These almost 5 to 6 foot tall sort of wall of tangled vines of this vineyard. And as you step closer and night is approaching, you start to see mists gathering thickly around your ankles that sort of flow out from between these vines. The path leading forward to where you see in front of you these 2 large monolithic stones sort of flanking either side of this path, where it then leads straight in between the lines. The only break in this sort of wall, you would almost say of bramble and thorn, but it is of vine and grape. These blood red clusters of grapes gathered there in the air, the almost constant sound of ravens quarking.
And you said, Tall, that Rakeesh and maybe some others too knew that the wine that they make here makes people forget their past, correct?
That it is, not always, but that for those who imbibe it, many people use it to forget. And there are many a tale of people drinking it and having nothing more than the normal forgetfulness of drinking alcohol, and others who literally wake up and don't even know who they are anymore.
Have you told us about this stuff, Rakeesh?
No, I don't think so, but he certainly does now that he sees these grapes. And I think he's most afraid that Tamarind might accidentally partake, right? So like he puts a hand on Tamarind's shoulders and turns around and he says, I should have mentioned this before, but the wine that these druids make here in their vineyard Many come from all over to drink the wine and forget the traumas of their past, but often they forget much more, and they forget who they are. So, and he squeezes Tamrin's shoulder and offers him a reassuring smile, I would not try any of the grapes tonight.
See, Tamrin looks you directly in the eye before his eyes wander slightly over to the grapes. Back to you. The grapes, back to you. One more look at the grapes. Oh, okay.
Jad is gonna go and pluck a bunch of grapes to stow away.
Okay. As you do, a raven comes and lands and just eyeballs you. And as you look at it, you see its eye is not sort of the black, smooth eye that you would normally expect of a raven, but it is a human eye.
That's very creepy. I love it. Did it do it after I plucked the grapes?
It watches you. It doesn't stop you, but it just sits there. And you might not have noticed it at first. It almost seems to like apparate out of the mists. And then when you look up with these grapes in your hands, you see this sort of ice blue human eye in the face of a crow.
Yeah.
Looking at you.
So, I love that. If my body had living reactions, I would shiver, but I do not. But I kind of back away and I turn to Rakeesh and I'm like, I put a hand on his shoulder. I do not put a hand on his shoulder. I approach Rakeesh and I'm like, Rakeesh, there are a number of birds here with human eyes. Is that something to do with the forgetful grape?
Well, I do not know. To be honest, I have not heard of the eyes, but I would guess that we are now in the realm of these druids, and they know we are here.
Lovely. Should I not have taken the grapes? Should I give them back?
I think perhaps, yes. I would give them back and apologize and say, I am sorry. I did not know that these were not up for grabs. And maybe they will appreciate that.
Yeah, so I go up and I'm like, apologies, old chappies. I had no idea these weren't up for grabs. They're not much use now that they're not growing on the vine anymore. But as a show of contrition, I will return these and, I don't know, wine them or something. And I put the bunch of grapes back at the foot of the vines. I'm like, I hope we're all good.
You see the grapes basically as soon as they hit the ground begin to rot, and the seeds get almost pulled into the ground. Almost looks like little rose claws pull them into the ground, and then new vines begin to grow out immediately and start to crawl.
Nice. A slight voice in my mind for brief instance, like, fascinating. We can harness that energy for ourselves. But I'm like, not thinking of that kind of stuff, and I walk back.
Okay. So, the rest of you, they're these two sort of monolithic stones. They are covered with almost these sort of primitive, in our world we'd say almost like Neolithic type designs. There are eyes and swirls and almost like cave painting type depictions, mainly of birds, and of birds with these oversized eyes, some with a third eye in the center of their forehead, others with their beaks open with an eye placed in their mouths. They all are just sort of frozen, carved and ancient on these two sort of Stonehenge-sized monolithic stones that flank either side of this path that leads deeper into the vineyard.
Has Dargan ever had any dealings or heard any history of these druids?
Certainly the history. Again, you would have known about the wine. You would know that they are very, as even the body said, a sect all of their own. The fact that you discovered that they intervened sort of in the workings of the world and lit this this beacon sort of on their own from what it said in the letter would have struck you as odd, because that's just not something you'd ever heard of them doing. It is almost as though they work on a whole different time scale than even elves and dwarves and others, that these druids seem to be very much affected by their druidic nature and almost creep through time at a glacial pace, even compared to elves and dwarves.
Is there any writing on the stones?
Not that you can decipher of any language. If it would be, pictogram level of writing, not any type of a true written letters.
Okay.
Mainly just these sort of disturbing pictures of birds and sort of druidic type symbols of sort of half man, half beast type depictions.
Can we see Can we see the beacon? Is it close?
The beacon is actually the other direction. It's closer over to Falcon Spire. It is
moved
not.
away from it.
Yeah, it is not within this. Sorry, I should have pointed that out. When you got to the top, you would have seen it over closer. It's not all the way at Falcon Spire. It would almost be sort of between these two locations.
Does Barzul know anything about this? Because he's, been around the block a bit. So I'm like, hey, handsome, do you know anything about this?
The writing.
Or the whole area?
Like I said, Thargan would have very little knowledge of. He's never been up on the. Thargan was never up this close to Falcon Spire or the plateau. It would only be through rumor and innuendo, and the stone druids have been noticeably absent in any parts of the war.
Oh.
Barzul will just sort of shake his head and say, I think we tread softly.
I turn to Rakesh for instructions.
Rakesh is noticeably nervous. He's not trying to hide it. There's a certain amount of anxiety here, and he turns around and flashes that same thin, swashbuckling smile that's been getting thinner a little bit every day to Dalvin, and then looks to Elspeth, and he says, the beacon is that way. The druids are this way. Are you sure? Is this still what you want?
The druids were the ones that lit the beacon. And if the druids have been neutral to the war this far, it stands to reason that might be the safest place that I can be.
Yes. Well, we have two choices then. We can all go in together, our hands up, and say, we mean you no harm, please allow us to speak with you. Or I can go ahead, make sure there is not a trap here in this place, and if I get into trouble, I can give you a signal above in the sky, and you will know that I need you.
I think we've gone this far together. A little further can't hurt. Also, last time we got separated, didn't really go well for you.
I know. I am glad you feel this way.
Should we talk about kind of well, I don't know how else to put it, so I'll just be straightforward. The man's head said everyone wants Elspeth. I have something bad on and in me, and Dalvin just looks at Jod. I mean, shrugs. Doesn't need to really explain more.
At any point, did we get close to the beacon? Or is it kind of like...
I
did we
mean, you
circumvent
would have
it
seen the
completely?
light of it. I mean, it's so bright that you would have seen the light of it, but to see any details other than the shining blue light. Elspeth, how close are you to the monoliths?
I think Elspeth would have gone right up to them to sort of inspect.
As you approach them, you see in multiple places on both sides a change. A small sliver of blue crystal, sort of, you not even wouldn't have been noticeable had anyone just been looking at it. It's so close in color to this granite. They begin to glow softly, and so does your pendant.
I think we're in the right place.
Barzul will like look down at Tamrind. She will
Tamrind.
always be wanted for her powers. That will never change.
Yeah. Hey, Tam. Can I see your back real quick where that mark is?
And just kind of knowing really their last interaction together and understanding that power kind of caused fear and anxiousness within her, he's very, very slow to kind of reveal that spot, but eventually does lift up his clothing enough to show it.
Is there any sort of reaction between the monolith and the mark on Tamrin's back?
You see the eyes of the crows. Even though they're in stone and they're carved, they almost seem to look.
I think you're going to find answers here too, Tamrind. Also, I'm sorry I ran away earlier.
I'm sorry. I wish I had more control over it, but there's maybe some good news. I did see something when I passed out. I think it was 14 from the book. I think I saw them, and they looked like they were in control, full control. Maybe I can get there too.
Maybe. But I just want you to know that you're not responsible for how people react to you. You know that, right? If people choose to react in fear or in panic towards you, that's not your fault. That's a failing on their part. You've got a good heart, Tamrind. It's not your fault that people choose to misunderstand it.
That was dramatic.
That was a dramatic puppy shake-off.
That was a very dramatic puppy shake-off. Thank you for that. No, this is the first time really ever I felt like myself around you all. and you guys took me in. You guys accepted me. So, yeah, that sounds good. And you see some of those fears and anxieties of what he is and what he can do and his effect on people. They're not gone, but they're definitely subsided a little bit. Some of that tenseness leaves, and the grin on his face is sincere.
All right, let's get moving. I guess this place is kind of giving me the willies.
Yeah, no, same. No, let's go.
It's those bird eyes.
Yeah,
So,
and we're gonna press on.
as you all press forward, walking between these two monolithic statues, the mist swirls sort of up around you and envelops you. It feels like time slows down, and even though you were just standing next to your companions, you feel utterly alone. You are by yourself in this nether region, surrounded by darkness and mist, the cawing of crows. There's a knowledge that fills each of you. Not a memory, but it almost feels like something you forgot long ago that's sort of been brought back to the surface of your consciousness. This is a place of echoes. Echoes of possibility. Echoes of what could have been, but never was. To step into these echoes is to slip not only into their skin, but into a different reality. A place where a single choice or single event changed everything you could have, perhaps should have been. It is not just a place of lucid dreaming, but a place of lucid realities. You're not just someplace else. You are between places, and where you exit from it may not be the reality from where you entered. Rakeesh. Ooh, stand by. I need to get folks' cameras back on. You find yourself in this place and are walking forward. The hard stone path below your feet, this granite walkway, becomes softer. You feel the familiar give of walking on sand. The sound of the ocean lapping on a beach reaches your ears. You hear the sound of your gran ahead of you, leading your people in the telling of the story sands. Mists part, and you find yourself on the beaches of your island. Not a memory, but the now of what could have been. Your people gathered on the beach, listening to the stories of your people. Tell me what you see as you approach this circle of stories back on your homeland.
He smiles unbidden when he looks upon them. And of course, they're telling a new story, and he's somewhere walking in somewhere in the middle. But there's other changes too, maybe a large tree hut, much taller than the rest, that spirals outwards, almost like an upside down pyramid. It's a sort of architecture that he's never seen. And there's more people here, more storytellers than there have ever been. There's more colors than he's ever seen, colors that he's never seen before in his island or in this world. And he sees them now, and he can't help but smile at that as the sand dances and they tell the story of a brave hero's triumphant return. but he stops too. He can't approach, not yet.
What stops you is as the sands are passed, you see them passed to you. A you that never left. An island that was never invaded. You stepping into your path of being one of the storytellers. You're smiling. Lost in the story, lost in the colors of the sand. You realize that some of these new colors are coming from you. Your experiences that you've brought back, where you've traveled and returned, that triumphant hero.
He doesn't want to feel envy or even anger for himself, this other himself, but he does. And this is sort of realization as he watches the ocean, the tide rise, the waves crash over the sand, and some of the story that he hasn't even been able to discern yet. He's still trying to figure out what is the story they're telling about this hero, and it washes back out to sea. And he is, for the first time, maybe a real appreciation for the permanence of stories. That's something he's learned from his experiences. And as he sees these new colors that are beautiful and enticing and celebrated, he knows that they're temporary. And he stops and he squeezes his hands so tightly that blood begins dripping down his palm from his nails. And he listens to the ocean, and he's listening for memories or voices. The voice of Dalvin, when Dalvin first returned when he thought he was dead. He's trying to imagine the things that aren't here. He's trying to imagine Tamrind, that smile, that friendly smile, the first time he saw him, and the fear too. The first time he saw Tamrind tap into whatever's inside of him, and the hope that he found when he met Elspeth, and the respect he has for Barzul, trapped in a body that's not his. Those are permanent to him, and this doesn't feel, he's not sure if this is real or not, but this doesn't feel right. And some of the naivety of his youth kind of fades in this moment. So he realizes maybe his people didn't have all the answers in all the worlds. Maybe they didn't have it all figured out. Maybe there's more.
And as you sort of have these thoughts, you see sort of beyond the fire, beyond the gathering of your people, sort of in a juxtaposition, the wasteland stretching out in front of you, taking over the sea, taking over the island, taking over everything. Just outside of the firelight, beyond your people, you see the suffering, you see the lost comrades, you see the destroyed grove. But you also see your companions.
He's frozen. He's looking at two places, two lives, or maybe more, that he's lived, and two possibilities. And I think part of him knows this isn't real, right?
As soon as you think that, you realize it is. It is a choice. It is the echoes of possibility. It is, you can step into the shoes of the storyteller, your island still alive, and that is what your future will be. All of the memories of the life that you lived since you were taken, no longer yours. It's not to live an illusion. It is to trim a branch off the trees of reality and live in one where the elves never came. That branch will end that you are on now, but you will exist on this other branch here on your island.
Rakeesh does something that he does very well for himself, and that's lie to himself. And because the truth is that he's afraid of the wasteland, and he's afraid of his companions, and he doesn't see the way forward. He doesn't trust the druids. He doesn't trust the humans. He doesn't trust the elves. He doesn't know how to get to where he wants to be, where he'll feel safe. He just pushes forward. And when he's presented with the other choice, he smiles and he laughs, and he begins to rush towards the beach, towards the ocean, towards the story, big smile on his face, prepared entirely to make a huge deal about his return, not even caring that there's another him here. Maybe they'll become the same person, he doesn't know. And then there's a crack, I think, like just a crack of lightning, like there often is on his island, and it stops him for just a second. And when his eyes close, he remembers at the top of that tower, he remembers holding Dalvin when Dalvin was figuring himself out. He remembers seeing the other part of Dalvin, or whatever Dalvin's becoming, and knowing that there are two people there, maybe more than two people there. And he remembers how he felt like he could hold on to this part, and maybe he could help Dalvin be who he used to be, or maybe he could help Dalvin be something new, but not that. And he's watched Dalvin talk to heads. He has watched Dalvin lick a lot of blood off of various people, including himself. He's seen a lot of hard things to forget. And despite all of that, he still feels something here. And that's something that his island never gave him. And so he stops and he turns towards the wasteland.
And you stand there between the two. And we're going to move away. Barzul. You are in a familiar place. A place you have revisited many times in your mind. You are at a campfire at night, and you are sitting across from Elodie. She has been a good captive for the last month, as far as prisoners go. Not like your usual bounties who beg and plead for release. Of course, she did see everything that you did to capture her in all of its horrific efficiency. You have spoken to each other over the course of your travels, but recently it was you who got quiet. As you know, you're only 2 to 3 days out from Grauvan's tower. She's never looked at you with anger or even pity. You wouldn't have suffered that. Or even a higher than thou righteousness that you've seen in many a bounty's eye before. What made her so different? She looked at you with kindness. Not fake syrupy kindness that hides a dagger in your back or poison in your cup, but the actual kindness for a fellow living being thrown in the madness of this war. Barzul, you are unnoticed, looking down at this campfire where Thargrin sits, and across from Elodie, as this scene unfolds, just as it has in your memory, but you used to always see it through your own eyes, and now you're seeing it as a trick of shadow in the firelight, seeing the scene from externally for the first time. And you watch as Elodie looks at you as you've heard her say so many times, echoing in your own mind. We're almost there, aren't we?
Argon sort of staring down into the fire, turning sort of knife over in his hands most compulsively. Not long now. Will be over soon.
It has been a journey, hasn't it?
Too long. Too long. And I think he finally looks up from the flames. Into Elodie's eyes, knowing what is coming, but not fully understanding.
She just looks at you and smiles. I want you to find peace. And I hope in your dark days to come that maybe you'll be reminded that even you deserve peace in this life. And she pulls out of her pocket a small carved wooden owl bear. whenever I've needed it most. This has always reminded me that someone out there hopes I'm safe. Whatever happens in the days to come. Whatever circumstance brought us to this, I always only wish you peace. And she places it in your hand. His name is Hubert.
Hubert. Clever name for an owlbear. Tear your face off. And I think Barzul, Thargan at that time, for the first time remembers something his sister used to do hundreds of years before. Small stone carved creatures playing with child in a simple home, relatively unadorned, and I think he knocks over the pieces accidentally and begins to sort of fret in this moment. And his sister, older, wiser, sort of puts a hand on his. They can always get back up, picks them up, sits them down. So he stares at this small carved owlbear and then looks to Elodie. And I think for a moment, there's that barb on his tongue, that thing that would cut, that he would so commonly use to push things away, to reinforce who he is to himself, to everyone else. And then just sort of closes his hand, closing off that thought, that sharpness. He doesn't say anything. Just sort of looks at her for a time. And that sort of gaunt, pocked skin and face pulls into a smile that is not vicious or self-righteous or prideful. Just a little soft smile. Weathered. And it sort of sees the fire sort of crackling up. You should rest. It'll be a hard day tomorrow.
She smiles and nods. And it always amazed you how quickly she could just find peaceful rest, literally with just rolling over and putting her head down. Her breathing becomes steady as she falls into this almost reverent sleep. Barzul, you see this scene. And you know you can step in. Step into Thargren's shoes. Make a different choice than the one you made 20 years ago. But
I think
go ahead.
looking down on this, I don't think Barzul has a choice. He's never felt like there was a choice. And so he sees this, and he just watches.
As you watch, you see another campfire sort of flickering against your wing over your shoulder. And sitting there alone is Elspeth. Traveling alone, on the run, without a protector. Without a gargoyle. There's other shadowy figures around her. You can't make them out. Their backs to you in the fire. Whether they're your companions or others, or if she's found herself in the same situation that Elodie found herself in, a captive, you don't know. But you do feel that is the other direction of this echo that you are experiencing. To step into that campfire.
I think he hears him and Tamrin's voice in that chamber below. He felt stuck in his own prison. And that for the first time, Tamrin showed him a choice. And he got to choose. And I think he looks down at his strange, big, strong hands. Thinks he can do something with these. Maybe not enough, ever, but something. Sort of turns his back on Elodie, Tharian, and walks as Barzul. Maybe something new to the other campfire.
As Barzul strides towards the other campfire, Elspeth. Ooh, that's loud. You see a tall figure approach you. Female. Silver hair and large sort of rope-like braids that fall down over her shoulders. Robes that sort of cascade down sort of a statuesque form. Strides out of the mist, and you find yourself in a beautiful grotto filled with waterfalls cascading down from above. Flowers and vines draped across from one wall to the other, green moss, beautiful silvery fish swimming below. It is with immediate recognition of the presence that this is Eldath. Not a living deity, as you know she sacrificed herself for her people, but an echo of her presence that still ripples out through this world. She comes over and sits on a rock covered with moss and motions for you. Have a seat. You've traveled far.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a journey getting here.
It always is.
Well, sit, crisscross applesauce.
The humans in Falconspire, they don't know the old magic of my orchard. Not like the druids do. They remember.
I don't think they care to know either.
I think that remains to be seen.
Oh, I think they care to exploit. I don't think they care to understand.
That is sometimes the unfortunate cost of being the one who brings peace and sanctuary. The evil men and women of the world see it as something to exploit and not something that is a gift. The beacon, while it represents sanctuary and peace because it's a part of me, that's not what it's really for. It's why the humans could never get it to light. Only the druids knew what the real purpose was. It was to call you, to call for aid. What these foolish and careless men have tapped into has only just begun. When you feed souls into the void, eventually the void will no longer settle for crumbs that fall through the cracks of the table. It will come looking to have the feast. Those of my bloodline, like you and others, are the only ones who can truly solve this. There are powerful people, your companions even, who could root out the corruption, make what they've done stop occurring, but they'll never undo that ripple that first soul thrown into the void began. It might not get worse, but either now or later, the hunger will come looking for more. It won't be easy. It won't be without pain and sacrifice, and it may not even be completed in your lifetime. And it need not be you to take this up. There is so much good that you can do without taking up this larger task, and there's others who I can still ask. The forgotten people of this land, they are desperate for aid, and there are many protected places I could guide you to where you could offer healing and sanctuary for those people who have nowhere else, who've been forgotten, who've been left behind. Your other companions are being shown their choices, but I figured we should talk.
For the longest time, I thought you were a curse.
Responsibility often can be.
You don't seem so bad now or so scary. The task ahead might be.
It undoubtedly is.
The work needs to be started. If not by me. I think it has to be me, though.
It will always be a choice. I didn't call you here to force you to a higher purpose, something that you don't want.
I don't think it's a matter of wanting or not wanting. I think it's just a matter of when someone is faced with a choice, that you hope that they want to do the right thing and that they will.
She smiles.
And so I guess that's my roundabout way of saying that it's time for me to stop running. Time for me to get to work.
The world will be a better place no matter what you have chosen. But this path is the one I hoped someone like you would take up. She dips her hand down into the water, and you see a single drop sort of suspended from her finger. And as it drips, she catches it and reaches out to you, and you see it is, instead of just the sliver like you have around your neck, a full tear of Eldath.
Oh,
This will help.
are you sure?
Well, no one can know what's to come. Not even a god, and certainly not the echo of one. But I have faith.
I prayed to you, you know. Did you hear? It's okay if you didn't.
My situation's a little different than others. But what you need to know is prayers ripple not just through space, but through time as well. And when I was alive, and still here on this plane, I felt a warmness in my heart that I now know came from you.
Well, it's very nice to meet you at last.
It's
I
nice.
really wish she was here. She probably would have loved to meet you too.
She already has. She's at peace.
That's good. That's good. If you see her, tell her hi from me. And I hope that Hubert served her well.
Hubert has his own destiny. And he is serving his purpose very well.
Good.
And with that, almost like a drop of water hitting on the surface of the pond, you see her sort of fade away. Let's take our break, and we will return with a couple more stories and the rest of our finale. I hope you all have been enjoying it so far, and we will be right back. And let's hop back into this as we move along in our finale, as our party has journeyed into this strange vineyard that exists on the cusp of the Shadowfell. Jad.
Oh, the music changes from happy to ominous. Love it.
Well, of course. Jad, you stand in the middle of your ritual chamber, reborn. For the first time in a long time, you know exactly who you are. Malwraith, newly forged Lich. Your decrepit body made new and improved upon by the vitality of the 8 corpses that hang on the walls surrounding you. You are a god among ants in both power and physical presence, terrifying in your beauty and stature. Memories crawling through the wasteland, an immoral shell with people feeding on viscera and blood, are quickly just fading away as you have realized everything that you have lived your life for. There is no choice here. There is no decision to be made.
The decision was made a long time ago when when I burnt down, when I destroyed that statue, and I said, I am going to live forever.
Or is there? You are immersed in this. Your phylactery is complete. Your ritual is done. What would you like to do?
I pick up my soul vessel and I gaze at it lovingly. This is the craft I have wrought. This is what I alone, even though there are probably others, but I alone have achieved this. And I use the like ghostly light emanating from it, and I cast it over the like 8 bodies that are around me that I use to fuel the soul vessel. And I like cast it over them and like look at them as though like, ha, you were useful to me, kind of thing. And does any of the bodies catch my eye?
Yes. Your hand, strong, muscular, everything as you wanted it to be. Glorious in its beauty. But it falters as you pass over and the light shines down on one crumpled form on the ground. They mean nothing to you. Of course they don't.
And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't. These are just. I mean, I picked them specifically because I don't do things by halves. So yeah, I guess they're important because I picked them, but they're important just like, you know, you would pick the right, you know, insect with the iridescence of their wings that looks pretty in your like cage, right? But like, oh, you know, this body looks interesting. I'm gonna walk over because I have forever now to do whatever I want. So the first step of forever is look at my handiwork, and no particular reason at all, just this one body over there. I just on a whim want to take a look at it, you know, just look at it.
You look down at it and in a non-fleeting way of, oh, this was the one out on that hilltop, distracted in his own thoughts. Silly, ridiculous, conservatively dressed, probably a bard. Long hair, not styled, just unkempt. Look, they even have instruments with them in their pack.
Got like a horn. Music.
Ridiculous.
And I circle the body like, yeah, like, why am I even doing this? Well, I'm doing it because I can do anything I want. I'm like epic right now. And I stand behind it facing the altar. And as I'm like studying this body, being like, oh, stupid, and maybe even I kick it with my foot, like, ugh, doesn't mean anything to me.
Flips over now, face up. Its eyes look up at you.
And I can't get myself to look at the eyes. I tell myself, psh, and I look up, and instead I look at the altar where I know exactly what I have carved on the altar, right? There are these like runes that I had to like research very painstakingly. I had to do like linguistic reconstruction on some of them to be like, okay, what was it 1,000 years ago and stuff. But for some reason, now that I'm looking at the runes, like I just glance up, trick of the light, coming from my soul vessel and stuff. The runes don't look like, the arcane sigils I carved. They look like the letters J-A-D. Just for a fleeting instant. And seeing that, I actually take a step back from the altar as though like something in it like almost pushes me
It's
back.
like it leaps out at you, this name. And you trip over the body and fall. You're now in its blood. Your beautiful robes that had been transformed along with your body now soaking in the blood and viscera and vile putrescence that has flowed out of this useful tool and are now soiling you. And as the head lolls over, not alive, just from the motion of you tripping over it, the head lolls to the side again, the face looking straight at yours.
And suddenly, like, these competing memories are in my head. So first, there's this tall, like, black-robed woman who is paralyzing my body as part of a punishment. This is my old mistress, right? Like my old teacher, and she's like paralyzed, and she says my name, Malrath. You will learn how to cope with this. And then immediately after that, there's this young man, this very like handsome young man, saying, "Jad, here's the well. This is where we get the water from in our village." And then right after that, there is a gold and red furred hobgoblin who says, "Dalvin, take this book. Maybe you'll remember something by reading the histories and the verses." And I'm like freaking out. Like, well, there's these three names swirling in my head. There's Dalvin, there's Malrath, there's Jad, and I'm like. My body should be able to contain the energy of all these 8 souls, and my own, which far eclipses them. What's happening? No, this shouldn't be happening. I am in command here.
And this all sort of assaults you. And you searched these bodies, you searched their packs, you didn't think anything of them. But poking out of the pack of this bard, this body that has offended you, you see the book.
And
it shouldn't be there. You know it wasn't there. You know it was not there when you took him.
And I don't like it when things aren't in place. That is not okay. but I'm scared to touch the book. There's something about it. I'm a lich. I'm amazing. But this book is like scaring me, but I'm drawn to it, and I'm like, ah. And finally, I'm like, this is stupid. I am the most powerful wizard ever. Probably not true, but I am the most powerful wizard ever. So I grab the book and I randomly open the page, and what is the first thing my eyes drop to?
It is a drawing, beautiful, of a hobgoblin. Red fur, golden stripe through their hair, and the eyes seem to follow yours. As you look at it, you can't escape them.
This is shaking my resolve. Like the last, 2-3 centuries that I've managed to eke out a living in order to get to lichdom, like I have my iron will has driven me for done horrible things. I've killed countless people. I've stolen and done all this stuff, but my resolve is failing right now after I've gotten what I wanted. This is intolerable. It's horrible. What is going on? But looking at this book and seeing this is suddenly bringing back the memories. I'd just been whatever, there was some dumb thing on the hilltop, whatever, there were all this stupid stuff, but suddenly these insistent memories, just before I had insistent memories of this past intruding into me, now I have insistent memories of the other life intruding into here. And I see a small gray impudent ugly gnome dumb person grinning up at me. I see him shaking in fear, and me saying you don't control it, you can master it, you can control it. I see this glorious blazing white woman filled with an energy that I can never comprehend, that I can never touch, but that I know is going to be our salvation. I see a stone creature blushing as I say, hey, handsome, let me ride you, and then crashing into a wall, and then me tumbling down, going oops. And finally I see this top of this tower with this forest stretching out far away. I see that same red gold person holding me as I am shaking and trying to sleep or falling asleep. And I don't see, I realize that I don't see as clearly the memories of, my life as this necromancer. I don't see clearly my life as this companion, this person. I think I see that even less clearly, the life of Dalvin, who studied with this book and everything. And I remember these words telling me you don't have to be either of them. You can be you, and you can just move forward. And my eyes focus again on the arcane marks, which no longer look like arcane marks. They just look like the name Jad. They don't look like anything else. I've never known them to be anything else. And I say out loud, my name is Jad, and I enter the book.
As you step through the book, you find yourself passing through the pages. and you step out onto an island. Waves crashing behind you. Rakeesh standing in front of you. Rakeesh, you see Jad step out of the waves. And you hear echoing on the surf, "My name is Jad."
And this is another moment where Rakeesh is momentarily stunned and confused as he's trying to make sense of all of this, but it's easy for him to not let things make sense and for him to react emotionally and instinctively. And so he had started to turn towards this wasteland where he saw his companions, but here comes Dalvin, who claims to be Jad. Does he look like Dalvin though?
He does. He still is. It's Dalvin's body. I mean, you noticed from the first time you saw him, he dresses far more flashy. He doesn't wear. Dalvin used to wear a shirt underneath of the vest that Jad wears. Right. Dalvin just sort of had unkempt long hair, and Jad has sort of styled it with this sort of side shave, and so it is the Dalvin you've known since he walked back into your life back at the camp, but it is definitely not the Dalvin from back at the grotto, which you've probably always a little bit known.
I think so. So Rakeesh stops and he watches as Jad comes onto the beach from the water. And you can still see there's still that story being told by the storytellers here, that other him that's not him. But he doesn't care about that right now. He stops and he turns and he begins walking down this multicolored sand towards Jad.
Jad is terrified because he's just made this, knowing what he understands about these mists and stuff, he thinks he's just made this choice. He's also, by making this choice, means he will forever have that hunger as long as he lives. So he is deciding the hunger, and he knows that he worries that Rakeesh only cared about him at all because he thinks that he is actually Dalvin. Dalvin has been dead a long time. All that remained were the ghost electrical impulses in his body, which is what led to the memories. And Jad is really scared now that he's made this choice that Rakeesh is going to reject him because he's a vampire. And he's gonna cast him out because Rakeesh is a good person. And Jad is worries that he is not a good person.
Jad is visibly shaking.
Which again doesn't happen normally because my body doesn't have living responses. So this is special.
Okay. Rakeesh doesn't slow down, doesn't speed up, and Rakeesh has some of the same fears. Rakeesh doesn't think he's a good person, not at all. Almost everybody who's ever been had a problem in his life, who's ever been in danger, he has let be taken or killed to save himself. And he knows that Dalvin isn't Dalvin. The name Jad means nothing to him, but he extends a hand, not all the way, maybe 10 feet of distance between the two of us, and stops, just offering a hand down the sand slope towards you. And he says, "Do you know, Jad, what my original name was, the name that first was spoken to me?"
And when you say the name Jad, Jad actually again, another involuntary, very rare shiver, because he's never heard you say that name before. And the fact that you're saying the name is whoa. he doesn't say anything. He just shakes his head, which is unlike him. He's very, loquacious normally.
The first name was Fire, and the second name they gave me was Piotr, and the third name they gave me was Banyan, and the fourth name and the fifth name, Rakish. That was the last name my people gave me before the elves came. We did not keep names for long. They changed like the wind, and they changed like our stories. They changed like our understanding of the world and who we are. Jad, is that the name you wish to be known by now?
And Jad licks his lips like uncertainly, again, unconscious reaction that he normally never deals with. And he says, you know that Dalvin is dead. Your friend is never coming back.
And yet, you remember me and where we've been, Dalvin and I.
And I shrug and I'm like, that's not important to me. Those are ghosts. That's not a good thing to say. Actually, I say out loud, I like ghosts. They aren't even ghosts. I'm like, I say, Dalvin is dead. Malrith, I don't even know what happened to him. I know that I am neither of those people anymore. And I won't forget anything. I won't forget that I came from them. I guess in a weird way, I was birthed by Malrith and Dalvin. Like they're my parents in some bizarre way. If we want to unpack that, I particularly don't. But they are not me. And I know you see me, and I know I've seen when you look at me that you want to find your friend, and I want you to know that that is never going to happen. And it's like I can't speak. I can't keep speaking. I'm just like, that's never going to happen.
His hand starts to fall for a moment, but not entirely, and then he extends it again. He just holds it there in the air, and he says, there is much about me, Jad, that you do not know or understand, and neither did Dalvin, because I did not tell him. You think that I cannot understand what it is you are feeling, and it is true. To some extent, I have no idea. But I think perhaps in a way, I do understand some. This is my home. This is Rakish. He is right over there, dancing and telling stories. They have no idea what other worlds and magics are out there. But I was taken from this place. And I fought in the war, and I killed men and women and good people. I have no doubt of this. And I ran when I should have been brave, and I stood when I should have been wise. These two people, this Rakish and that Rakish, they are not the same. I am the child of two worlds, just as you are the child of two very, very different people in a way. And so, if it makes you feel better, because I do not care about my name at all, you can give me a new one if it means that you will stay.
And I like pause, and I'm like, I've seen you look at me when I feed, which is not unkindly, but like kind of, revulsion. And I'm like, that is my life. That is my life now. There's no, I will keep licking things, all the things. Um, that is how I exist. Whatever Malrith did to Dalvin's body, I don't know, and honestly, I don't care to know at this point. Are you okay with that? I have seen you look at me, hoping for something else. Are you okay? Jad's having a hard time accepting that Rakeesh is accepting him.
I will not lie to you and say that it doesn't scare me. Of course it does. But I've turned my back on everyone I loved in my life at one time or another. And right now, I want to see where our story goes. And not just ours, Jad, but Tamarind and Barzul and Elspeth, who is to say that maybe whatever miracle is inside Elspeth might not be able to help us. But I don't want you to be anything other than what you want to be. I just want you to stay. And I want to stay too.
And like hearing that, I look at you for a long moment, and then I start laughing. But it's not like often when I laugh, it's that like cold Malrith laugh that's like high and horrible. But this one is like joyous, happy laugh, which is a laugh he doesn't produce very often. Normally it's either the evil one or like a ha 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 ha, I'm so cool sort of laugh. And he, with his like inhuman speed, like rushes at you and like embraces you and like picks you up and spins you around. Not like, super fully bodied. I'm not that strong, but I'm strong enough to like, as I'm hugging you, like I pick you up and spin you around, and I'm laughing. And as I'm laughing, you can see my fangs are very prominent, and I'm not trying to like mask them where I can sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Rakeesh lets go in this moment because he doesn't know, like, is Jad going to rush towards him and
eat him?
Right? Yeah, like he still has fear, right? He doesn't know.
Right.
He's really throwing himself out here right now, but he knows that he really knows that this, this vision of what his life could have been, that's not who he is anymore. He's somebody entirely different. And maybe this is his way forward, and he doesn't have, for him, it's not a choice. He knows how he feels, and he knows that he has to go forward, and he doesn't want to do it alone. And here's somebody that he actually loves. And so he's afraid of the fangs, but he laughs as he's spun around in the air and he embraces Jad.
So we will leave them embracing on the beach. You will see out in the wastelands, the vision over to your right, there is a campfire that is there. While still in the wastelands, there it is somewhat warm and inviting. And we're going to move over to Tamarind.
Mm-hmm.
Tamarind. The vineyard fades away, and you are walking through a snow-covered forest. You hear the crunch of frost under your feet, and a chill breeze sort of ruffles your hair as your nose fills with the crisp, clean smell of winter air. It's something you've never experienced before. You walk into a village set in a clearing against an outcropping of rock. It's not Willow Marsh, but all the faces are familiar. The sapsiles, the roots, your own family, the arbor leaves. You spot your older sibling, Orvin, dressing a deer, and standing next to them is someone you don't recognize, someone unfamiliar to you. A tall gnome with a pale, milky complexion like the snow, brown hair that fades at its tips to resemble the frost on the trees that surround you. Broad of shoulder, kind of a lean, lithe build, almost like the stag for speed and hunting. Still a gnome, but tall amongst the rest of the gnomes here. This other gnome, with sort of the frost-tipped hair, looks up and his eyes lock on yours, and you instantly know that he is you. A Frostgrove gnome instead of being one born of the wastelands. A reality when the families of Willow Marsh moved north, away from the war, and as always happens with the gnomes, their genes adapt, and their new life here in the northern forests created you. You seem happy. People greet you with broad smiles as they pat you on the back, congratulating you on another successful hunt. You see the thankfulness of the elders of the other families that you have provided for the village once again, and your parents beam with pride on their faces as they look at you, something they've never done before. This echo, you know, is another choice. You just need to step into this life and it will be who you are. Not just you, but your whole village will live out this way. But you hear a noise behind you, and you turn around, and it's not this northern forest that you feel or see. It's the wastelands. And you see a lone figure sitting on a rock, heads in hand, weeping. The gaunt figure has the familiar gray, patchy skin like your own, covered with patches of scales and calluses, unruly hair a bit longer than your own. They're crying not in sadness, but in the way that you yourself are familiar with. When the trauma just becomes too much and you have to just let it out before it consumes you. That crying that can only happen when you think you are totally alone and you can just let it rip through you unimpeded. They're sitting in front of a cave you recognize from the battle, the one that housed Site 2. They look up, almost seeming to sense your presence. You can see where the crystals that the Zambarthanes put in their chest have grown and basically consumed their entire chest cavity, reaching all the way up into their throat. And you peer into Subject 14's eyes, and you see that same spark that you felt, that no matter what else, he wasn't alone. Behind you, back in the village, you can hear the sound of that feast being prepared. As you look over your shoulder, someone started a snowball fight. You can see yourself, that gnome that you could be, laughing and sharing hot drinks with Orvin, Bolson, the Root Twins, all friends. A new generation discovering this new place all together, arm in arm. Tamron, you feel untethered for a moment and able to interact with these two scenes before committing to any choice you might make.
Tamrin goes to make a move, and I think even he's not sure of which way his body is compelling him first, but he can feel that twinge in his knee, that same twinge that locked up when we first found him out in the forest. That stopped him from running away for the first time. Now locks him in place. He looks to the village. Happy, smiling village. The happy, smiling Tamrins. The thing he's always wanted. The thing he's desperately wished for, prayed for every day of his life. True and total acceptance from friends and family. And he knows this is it. This is his shot at it. This is the life he's begged for every single day. And all it would take is rewriting every single thing he knows about himself. This thing he's begged and prayed and hoped would come for years. He found it in days' time. This thing he did, this regret and this sadness he feels for what happened to his village. He didn't mean to do it to any of them. It wasn't his choice. To leave the folks he's found now would be. And it's not something he can stand for because he knows it's not something that they think he would do. And he finally cares, truly, not in a superficial sense, cares about what other people think. And so as he sits there and takes one last look, the Tamrin he always wanted to see, he'll feel his knee drop, that locked tenseness, and he'll start striding towards that lone figure. And as he approaches, even with the tears in his eyes, knowing what he's giving up, he pulls that same toothy Tamrin grin as he realizes for the first time in his life, he gets to extend a hand and introduce himself to somebody. And he does so once he approaches this figure.
You see 14 almost look at you questioningly and look over your shoulder as though they can see that other possibility, that other echo. The connection that you have with 14 is letting him see the choice you've made. And as you start to walk from him, he at first starts to shake his head. Unable to speak, but with eyes looking at you and looking over your shoulder and shaking his head that you should go the other way and grab that life. And then you extend your hand.
Tamara notices the looks he's making. And Tamara will turn back, take another look before returning the gaze with 14. Whew. Pretty busy over there. A lot going on. But they seem like they're plenty happy themselves. You Sorry, where are my manners? I'm Tamarind. I'm Tamarind, and I'm a gnome, and I think I'm a gnome just like you.
14 extends their hand, and you see them start to open their mouth to try to speak, but they can't because the crystals have grown up into them. But as your hands touch, you hear a voice in your mind. Can you hear me?
Of course. I'm right here with you.
Hi, Tamarind. And you look down and you see these crystals that you see they're different than the ones that you've encountered before. And you realize that 14 has been standing bodily in front of that crack in the table that souls fall through, and has been keeping them from being lost. That those souls that would have been doomed to the void, this tiny little figure in the grand scheme of things, has been holding them to make sure they were safe, to the detriment of his own physical body.
Tamarind takes a second to process this. And I think he thinks back to Rakeesh when they first met on the path, and how quick he was to help and offer his guidance and his aid. So Tamarind will look this gnome in the eye, hold his hand tightly, and just say, "You're not alone. How can... Let me help."
You see him at first almost shake his head the same way that he shook his head at you. When you were making your choice. And he sees the earnestness in you. And he just gives sort of a resolute nod. And he lays his hand on that place on your back. I would love to tell you it's not painful, but you feel a crystal rip through your skin out of your shoulder blade, sort of growing out of the bone. As it grows out of the center of that handprint. He says, "That's enough for now." Thank you.
And Tamron will just pull him in a hug.
There's that reluctance at first, but then that almost how you sort of melt into a hug that you've needed for way too long.
I think it's the first time Tamron's really given a hug.
Yeah.
Specifically to any other gnome. To anyone his size, to anyone like him.
As you're there hugging, you look over sort of the other shoulder, scene of the wastelands, and you see a campfire. And you see your companions gathered around it. 14 sort of steps back and kind of wipes tears away unabashedly, sort of turns you towards them.
Tamron nods, knowing that he's going back. But he wipes his own tears from his eyes. Just say, we'll see each other again.
He nods. Sort of gives you the hurry on now. Don't miss your train.
And he starts to walk away before he does turn back. And very seriously, how do you do it? How do you stay you?
He just says one word to you. Believe.
With a nod, Tamron will turn and start walking before full-on sprinting back to the group.
All of you. From different directions, approach out of the mists and out of that in-between space to a campfire in this reality. Barzul, Elspeth, Jad, Rakeesh, hand in hand. Last, Tamron. The night sky shines above, stars looking down. Campfire crackles. Maybe some faces here you weren't expecting to see, knowing what you just went through. What do y'all do?
Are we still in the vineyard, or is this somewhere
You
entirely
are
different?
still, you are in a clearing. There is a polished, sort of crescent shape clearing of granite, polished almost like a lobby floor in a hotel. Very out of place, but it is a huge moon-shaped crescent of black marble with sort of these veins of white across them. All around you, you can see the vines there, the mist still sort of curling underneath them. You can see the path leading back, perhaps the way you came, off in one direction. It continues on in the other, and then there's a much larger path that leads, it's almost like a T, that leads straight up towards a large building made of stone.
Jad Jad's in a very good mood, and he's also not the kind of person to just be like, oh yeah, whatever just happened, let's forget it. So he's like, well, that was a trip, everyone. And he like looks at everyone, except Rakesh, who he was there with him, but he looks at the other three like,
Yeah. I'm not sure what everybody else went through. Just turn that around. But I have a task. And I think I need to talk to the stone druids about this. And Elspeth will open her hands and the tear.
You see it glow brightly with that same, her gem you've seen glowed a little bit before, but this has that same purity of light that you saw from the beacon, and that just looking at it fills you with peace.
And I look at that and I look at Rakesh and I'm like, well, I learned that I have one dead parent and one undead parent, but actually they're both dead, so like whatever. And either way, I am going to help you do what you want to do. And I clasp Rakesh's hand. I'm like, and I think this guy is gonna also do that. I falter at the end because I'm like, oh, but yeah.
Rakesh squeezes the hand and nods and says, oh, we have all followed you this far because we know that you deserve to make your own choices of what to do with this beautiful gift you've been given. And no one else should make that choice for you. Is this what you wish?
Well, like I told her, it's not necessarily a choice of wanting or not wanting. It's when help is required that we do the right thing. But I wouldn't ask any of you to do this with me.
I'm like, hey, miracle lady, I don't just grab severed heads and like wave them around for any, well, maybe I do, but just saying that you're important enough for me to do things for.
Okay. I appreciate that.
I give it fangy grin.
I think Barzul always sort of lingers towards the back. And you hear him say, Elspeth, I don't think you need to ask. We will be here.
You fought for so long and you've done so many things. You deserve peace.
I don't think, or I don't know if I will find it, but we'll sort of put a hand, sort of walk up and put a hand Tamarin's head because it's like literally like at like my waist.
Yeah.
Sort of just ruffle his hair a little. But we can try.
Barzul,
That's all anyone can ask.
as you do so, you see, sort of has ripped through his shirt, still with some blood on it, a crystal growing out of Tamarin's left shoulder. But it doesn't have that. Well, it looks like the others. You saw the first one made. It doesn't have that pool on it like you were familiar with.
Just push Tamarin forward a little bit. And I think some of us can help.
That'll push. Tamarin will kind of take a stumble before kind of composing himself and standing completely upright in the most like brave fashion that he can think of, and will nod his head and say, "We believe in you, Elspeth."
Well, I guess faith is something that's in short supply, so it's best we bring a little bit back to here. Let's get started.
As Tamarin comes into the light of the tier, you see the crystal on his back begin to glow. That sort of dark, bruised color.
And I'll move a little closer to Tamarin with the crystal, with the tear.
It grows a little brighter, but you can see up near the very sort of top spike of it, it's sort of almost like a quartz crystal. At the very end of it, where it once was that bruised color, it's almost like that bruising begins to fade.
Here's something new.
I'll be something better.
Yeah. Well, everybody, shall we?
Although I do not like or think I quite trust these druids, we should be careful.
The druids know things because they exist elsewhere. Does that make sense? They can help us.
Well, I hope they will.
Worst case, I'll lick them.
Well, I'm sure that'll make for an interesting footnote in their histories.
I think this is gonna work out great. I really do. And real quick, Tamarin will turn to Barzul, like kind of like hiding like his mouth and his body like mannerisms, and just like look at him and be like, "And if it doesn't," just that.
So, you all sort of turn, group of companions begin to walk down this wider road towards this large building where the stone druids, your fortunes and fates await you. That's where we're going to end our story. But I would like to go around and let everyone in character have sort of a last moment if they would like to take it. Either immediately in this moment or further down a future. Let's start with Barzul.
I don't know if it is tonight, but I think there's a night where around a campfire, as the last dwindling embers flicker up into the night, and Tamrind, Jad, Rakesh each sort of slumber. Elspeth sits maybe a little bit later up. I think Barzul has been slowly, quietly, in his own time, carving. And he pulls something out of his pocket and looks Elspeth in the eye for this night and says, "You have your journey, and I think now I have mine, but I think this is yours." I hold out a small carved owlbear. His name is Hubert.
Hubert, I know.
And I sort of open my other hand, and there are five small carved figures. A small gnome, a goblin, a shahad.
Oh, whatever.
A larger gargoyle, and a woman holding the crystal. I'm not very good at creating things, but maybe these hands can find a use for bringing life. I also will hold out the small figures.
Well, I'm happy to teach you how to carve.
It's been almost 500 years since I did. Maybe a reminder, as it were.
I've gotten better since I've made him. But we talked a little bit about finding a purpose, finding a new purpose. But don't forget that purpose is one thing, but it's always nice to have a hobby. And Elspeth will pull out the dagger and grab a piece of wood. See, the trick is go about explaining the carving to him.
That's so lovely.
And I think that sort of fades that scene.
Yeah. Jad, Rakesh, Tamrind? Or Elspeth, if you've got another moment you'd like to take.
I'll let someone else go and then
I'll go real quick. This is just a silly thing that I've wanted to do, and I just want to end it with I think if we cut back to this moment of us making our way towards that building, Tamrind, inspired by everything that's happened, is like it's taking a lot of effort, but he's really trying to like rush forth and lead the charge here, and very like confidently like marching, like leading the pack almost, fully empowered and fully deeply believing that these folks are unbeatable and that their cause is a righteous one. And as he's walking, he's just so, just queued up on everything, just so pumped. The words from 14, everything that just happened. And I think there's a moment when his preparation and him wanting to like lead into things and be ready pops that aggressive side of him, that fight or flight response, and that power inside starts to creep in and take over. And he's still marching forward now in that more staccato, very tense, rigid way, leading his bright blue pupils sink into that sea of darkness. And the folks behind him, they can see this blood red, bruised force and energy beginning to swirl around him, and not enveloping or swallowing him or anything, but just spinning around him, circling him. This darkness taking these small forms, and very slowly, very slightly, one of these small forms, you see a crack in it, a brightish blue crack forming in it, and the others swirling around him do the same, until eventually all of this darkness surrounding him cracks and bursts in this bright flash of light, and those kind of amorphous darkness blobs that have been circling him now appear as radiant spirits in the form of small gargoyles. And when he turns to look back at you, that rigidity dropping, some looseness back in him, his face turned to you, beaming with pride at what's happened, this magic that he's summoned himself. You can see one eye swallowed in darkness and the other, that bright blue, shining through. And Tamrin's toothy grin, proud of what he's accomplished.
Rakeesh?
So Rakeesh continues on with Elspeth and his companions, and they managed to get her to safety, at least for the time being. And there are many other adventures to come. And I'd like to imagine that for a while, they're all together. They're an adventuring party, they're a band, and the world is hard and war is hard, and they can do good. And for a time they do, and things happen. One at a time, people drift apart for reasons they can control and reasons they can't control. But I would like to imagine, and I'm open, Sharang, but that Jad and Rakeesh stay together, or at least they always find a way to reconnect. Even after years, perhaps they find each other again. But after adventures all the way to the south and the west, and returning the dragon scale to the conclave, to the grove, and getting the book of Eldath, the history of the war, into the hands of someone who can continue that history, a job for which Rakeesh was never very well suited. And fighting and laughing and traveling and feeding more refugees and getting older and laughing and getting older and getting older. There is a time Rakeesh, his purple and gold hair, now silver and just a faint yellow, and his red fur now a withering pink, where I don't know if Jad would have been with him, or maybe if Jad found him.
Sure.
Um,
I think Jad would be with him. Jad ages a lot slower.
that's
but
right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, that would become over time, like Rakeesh would sort of laugh that off. And then, he'd always say, like, I don't care about getting older or looking older. I know how my spirit is when I'm with you. But this time, at the end, Rakeesh says something different as he's sort of laying on his bedroll, speaking up to John. He looks you directly in the eye, and you see it, the fear that was there that you recognized when you were first reconnecting or connecting, that over the years faded. And he says, I thought that I did not need to live forever like you do. I thought that all I needed, Jad, was to live a life worth telling in a story. But I think I'm close now, Jad, and I'm afraid. Can you save me? Can you keep me, please?
And I take Rakesh's chin and I tilt it up so I'm looking in his eyes, and I smile, a genuine, like, loving kind of smile, and I open my mouth and I rear down and bite him. And I'd like to end the scene there, actually.
Okay. I love it.
Anita, would you like to go first? Or would you like mine to go first?
You go first.
So I have a singular moment in before all this, when we're still adventuring with all of us, like shenanigans are happening. In the distance, there's another, like, echoing what we just did. There's like a cliff, another like cliff, but on the cliff is this blazing column of bright white light that hurts to look at. Inside this white light, there's a woman, Elspeth, like suspended in the light, like glowing and like emanating this. If one were to have a bird's eye view, there's like an army like rushing towards this like column of white light, and in front of the column, guarding it, is this like tiny but terrifying like gnome figure that's like half transformed, and booking it towards the scene from another area, coming from another like mission, is this ignominious figure of Barzul carrying what looks like a carriage, like flapping as hard as he can towards this like white light. And inside the carriage, because these two, they're like, well, there's nothing we can do to speed us up, we're just gonna sit here. On the seat, Jad is sitting, and between his legs, Rakeesh is sitting, and we've been traveling, a lot. Rakeesh has these like blood fleas that he managed to like catch because he's the furriest of all of us. And the scene is Jad is like combing through Rakeesh's like fur, picking out these like you have to like yank them out of the skin because they like latch onto you. He's like picking out these blood fleas, but they're also full of blood. So Jad's just like, and he like pops them in his mouth as he like pulls them off of Rakeesh one by one. And the scene ends with him banging at the ceiling, and he's like, "Hey, handsome, let's go faster." And the scene ends as they soar towards their next step of their adventure.
Awesome. And we'll end with Elspeth. Do you want to stay with this music or a little happier music?
We can stay with this music for now. It's good. It's good denouement music.
It is, yeah.
So Elspeth, through the stone druids, with the help of her friends, begins the task of helping the land recover and it's not met without resistance from either side. But eventually, at one point, later down the road, Elspeth, still with the tear in hand, is standing in a very similar spot in the wastelands, a spot where she once ran from werewolves. And she's holding the tear. Her companion's behind her. And at this point, with as much clarity, she takes the tear and she digs a small hole in the earth and places the tear inside and buries it. And from that, light erupts. The land begins to shape and transform. A new pool, a new lake forms. And in the middle is a singular island with a beautiful, glorious tree that stretches up towards the heavens.
Love it. And as you all are gathered around, looking at this new beginning for what had been lost, we'll fade to black and say goodnight. So, let's go around real quick and let us know where we can find you all. Put a little happier music on for our sign off. Hope you all enjoyed our story.
That was really lovely music, though, Jay.
And we can go back to it. I literally picked a happy ending song, though.
Happy ending song. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
It's not too crazy happy.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Still good.
Yeah. So, Bert, tell us where we can find you.
Hey, folks.
And if you have any last words of as we finish this little campaign we did, this little adventure.
Yeah, for sure. I'm Bird. You can find me as Bird versus Plane basically everywhere. I know this wasn't necessarily the game that we set out for, but god dang, am I so happy it is the game this became. This was such a fun, silly and serious when we wanted to be group. And man, I don't know. It's just been a second since I've had a chance to game, and I'm so happy it's been with this crew. This like really like reawoke why I love doing this. So thanks, guys.
Next up, Carl.
Yeah, Carl, I don't know where you can find me on the internet. I was talking to Jay earlier, and it was just like this group of people. And Jay, like, it has been an absolute pleasure, and I think has pushed me as a player, and I love the story, and I loved finding and seeing everyone find new things in their characters, and how it's sort of just changed and rolled and built something honestly beautiful. And like, I've been sort of like on and off, like weeping the entire night. So this has been fantastic, and thank you. I love this story. I will forever really cherish it.
Absolutely my pleasure, and thank you so much. Don.
Hey, I am Don, and I had such an amazing time. So I haven't gotten to play a lot with, mostly none of you, but a little bit with, I think I played a little bit with Jay and Derek before, but not in something like this. And so I was really looking forward to it. I love getting to play with new people, but you never know what it's going to be like. What's the group chemistry going to be like? What's the story going to be like? And everybody in this group was amazing storytellers from beginning to end. Everybody trusted each other. Jay listened and gave, and it was just a very generous game. And so I had such an amazing time with this dark story that was about hope, and I loved everybody's characters. This was a great experience for me, and I'm just very grateful for everybody here. So thank you all for letting me be a part of this. And it was really cool hanging out and playing and meeting with all of you. And if you want to find me, just like look on the internet somewhere. I'm out there doing stuff, but like, this was a great game, and I'm really looking forward Tall Squall, seeing what else you do with this world, because I think this is a very cool world, and I want to see where you take it.
It's been a super pleasure playing with you as well, and thank you. Next up, Anita.
Hi. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure. Just every single one of you is an immaculate role player and storyteller of the highest caliber, and it's warmed my heart every week to be here. So thank you all so much, and thank you, Jay, for telling this story and letting us share your world, because it's beautiful. And yeah, when we had our session 0, we did talk about how we wanted to make sure that while this was a dark story, that there would be this thread of hope, because you can't always have doom and gloom. There always has to be that little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And thank you for trusting us to help bring that to your world as well. I'm Anita. I was Elspeth, but I continue to be Anita. So you can find me on socials, Anita or Critical Misses. That's me. I tell you where you could find, or when you could find me, but we'll just move along.
And certainly not least, Sharon.
So I'm Sharang, and for these few weeks I played Jad, Nay, Malrith, and Dalvin. That was really epic. I have rarely played 5e with such intense character interactions. And I mean, I've played a fair amount of 5e, and I've played a lot of games with intense character interactions. I play a lot of Nordic LARPs, for example. But I've rarely played 5e with such intense character interaction, right? And I thought that was, not to say that this is the best way to play or the other ways to play are bad or deficient. It was just really epic and really cool. And like, initially, like, Jay and I talked about where's the character going, and we'll see. And then Jay's decision to make the like body of Jad the person that Don's character knew, that Rakesh knew, was like left field. It came out of, and it became the like dominant, like emotional, like tether, right, to Jad. So much so that it ended with this like not really well defined, what is this relationship these two have? Who knows? I mean, someone knows, but we don't know. So that was really interesting. I really love that. And I like how we ended in this like, let's see what the future brings for these characters kind of thing. It wasn't like, now you save the world, right? That was really cool. I really enjoyed that. This group was really lovely. And I was telling Jay, like, I don't often have good 5e DMs, and this was a great 5e experience. I'm Sharing Biswas on Twitter. You can find me there. You can find me at Astrolingus on Itch. You can, I think there are 2 days left of the Avatar Kickstarter if you want to support that. Thank you for watching us do all these like weepy scenes and not rolling that many initiative dice, right?
No, we really didn't.
Joining us. We had like 4 combats in total or something.
Yep.
So thank you for joining us and watching us and commenting and cheering and being creeped out by Jad. I loved being creepy. Loved was past tense.
Thank you so much. I had just the best time getting back behind the DM screen, and y'all have just been the most amazing giving players and helping to weave these stories and add so much more to this world. I mean, one of the biggest things that I want to happen even with this world as it eventually maybe becomes a published thing is, it is meant to be a world that players and a DM create together along as they go from era to era. So You all have just made the world so much richer by lending your stories to it and being a part of it. And I'm always just honored and humbled when I have such amazing tables with such amazing people who bring such emotional honesty with them to a game. That's why I love role-playing games and love TTRPGs. And I guess all I have to say is until next time, everyone gather your friends together and tell a story, because that's what it's all about. Good night, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Be safe out there.